Welcome wherever you are to ALFsplaining, the podcast taking a notably British eye to the American sitcom ALF. And I think that means our eyes are wearing tiny bowler hats and gore-blimey trousers. With me, Ben Baker.
And me, John Matthews.
And recently we had the absolute privilege and pleasure to talk to Mike Reiss, who worked on programmes as influential, brilliant and hilarious as Sledge Hammer, The Tonight Show starring Johnny Carson, The Critic, It's Garry Shandling Show, and of course, The Simpsons. Did we ask you about any of that? No, not really, because we're hardcore ALF nuts here, and we don't clearly know a good thing when we see it. So, what would be even more bonkers is to somehow get Mike's frequent co-writer on all of the above projects, but has also been credited as showrunner on over 450 episodes of The Simpsons, the biggest TV programme of my, and let's be honest, most people's lifetimes. So, Algene, let's get granular about ALF.
Hooray! Hooray!
Well, thank you so much for joining us. This is a genuine pleasure, and I'm guessing Mike Reiss said we were nice boys, so you agreed to come on.
It's great. It's great to work with somebody for 40 years and share all these experiences.
So, obviously, we spoke to him last week, so we got quite a bit of the background, but he said, like, he joined, obviously, for season 2, and he seemed to have loads of fun doing it, despite the fact that pretty much the previous seasons' writers all escaped en masse.
Well, what happened was we were working on a show called Sledge Hammer, which was also very funny, but it was like last in the ratings, and there was a real concern it might not come back. And in fact, the showrunner did this hilarious thing where he ended the last episode with a nuclear explosion on Sledge Hammer. So,
Yeah.
it was like, well, we better get another job. So we went to ALF, and the year we got there, I don't think because of us, but it became a top 10 show. And I've never been before or since on a top 10 show. Except maybe I guess you could count Johnny Carson as like a universe unto his own. But
yeah.
So and the other person I would credit hugely, Bob Bennetson was the showrunner when we were at ALF, and he was terrific. I'm still friends with him, and he taught us how to do it, how to be efficient and funny and not overwork but not underwork. Just the whole process.
I saw an interview with you on YouTube somewhere where you said that ALF was the biggest ratings you've ever had in your career.
It was.
Is that right?
One of the episodes we wrote, I think, had 23 million viewers.
That's incredible.
Maybe a Simpsons I produced that aired after the Super Bowl had like 20 million. It was called Homer and Ned's Hail Mary Pass, but even that I don't think was as high as the top 10 ALF in 1987.
A different environment for TV, obviously, as well. Less.
Well, when you got, three choices, yeah, it's like A, B, or C.
Well, absolutely. You see a lot. Did you ever get to the point where you thought, well, ALF wouldn't say that? Or was it always quite like an open field to keep pitching daft ideas?
No, the ALF issue, and again, really enjoyed it. Paul Fusco was brilliant. He was the voice of ALF, the creator, he and his wife, Linda. So I thought, this is really, really funny show. However, Paul had a rule that was pretty strong that nobody could see ALF except the family. So you wound up going, okay, there's ALF has a friend who's blind, can't see him, but can talk to him. Or ALF has a friend who's like a child who doesn't realize he's an alien, but after, a lot of dream episodes, you start going, how many premises are there when nobody can see your character? And he didn't want to do, and I think he was right, episodes with other aliens from Melmac because it started to look puppety. And we'd rather ALF, which had more advanced, controls and movements, be the one character that looked different. And that was great. But after even, we worked a little on season 3, we had a couple episodes, it was really hard to think of new premises that ALF could. So you went to The Simpsons, it was like, oh man, you can go anywhere and do anything. You can expect anybody.
It's like those strict parameters defined the show. They defined ALF, but
Yes.
they were very restrictive. So you're working around them. Did that help creatively in any way? Did you start thinking in different ways to try and come up with plots?
As I say, in season 2, it was great, and we got to do an episode where we met some of the cast of Gilligan's Island. But then you go, you can't keep doing that. You have to do different things. So I would say in terms of me personally, I loved it there. And then on the other hand, it would have been hard to keep going, year after year on that, as opposed to I'm, I've been with the Simpsons 35 years, and I think there's a shot we'll make it to 40, which is insane.
I think possibly, yeah. Just a little bit, yeah. More than anything, and we said this to Mike as well. Alf and Trevor Ockmonic should have been best pals. They should have been the sitcom.
Oh, that's an interesting thought.
They seem great pals. They could have been great pals. I feel.
Yeah. Well, Max Wright was a genius. I saw him on stage once in Merchant of Venice. He's just he's in the movie, all that jazz. He's got a really, really unique vibe and a
Yeah.
really great persona. But there's a point too where you just kind of fed up with Alf, but nothing really, goes any, he doesn't like what Alf's doing, but he's not gonna, be mean to Alf.
Yeah.
And so yeah. And then I think Mike may have told you the other thing we didn't know until after the show wrapped was the cast was terrified shooting the show, physically terrified because there were trenches that would be open for the puppet. Paul and Linda would be lower than stage level, and the cast were terrified they would fall into the trench, while doing their lines and break their necks. So, like Andrew Ellison, it was like, oh God, I'm glad he didn't have to keep doing that. I was so scared.
It's funny, yes, we had heard about these trenches, but we
Yeah,
didn't
I can
get
imagine.
around to asking Mike about it. That is something that we find fascinating.
I knew about the trenches, but I didn't know how. I mean, I get it now, yeah, because it was like a maze, that living room.
Yeah.
And the shoot was, most shows you say read on a Tuesday and then, shoot the following Monday or Tuesday. But on Alf, you read and rehearsed 2 days and shot for 3 full days. So it was complex. And obviously there's not going to be a studio audience when you've got a 3 day shoot.
I can well imagine that. Did you spend much time on the set then? Did you actually sort of visit there? Or did you
Not
did you
us,
just stay in the
no.
writers' room?
There was one really, really funny thing was on the monitor, after the first season, they had a second Alf made, more complex, and the original Alf puppet was like the backup. So when they rehearsed, they'd use rehearsal Alf. And Paul then didn't have any broadcast standards, so he was really like rehearsal Alf was like this kind of like showbiz guy who's off camera who doesn't care what he's saying and doing, and it was Alf, and um, so those I don't know if they ever saved any of those videos. Those were really really funny because otherwise we were
There
a
are
kid show at NBC, not a kid show, but
kid friendly. Yeah.
the other thing I don't know if Mike told you, there was with the I was gonna say with the cat, there was a time that we actually got a real cat that he tried to eat, and the cat was terrified when Alf put his mouth. So the trainer, I'm proud of this, but the trainer took the cat, and the cat came back clearly had been tranquilized a lot. So then they were able to put Alf's mouth around it, and the cat was like, eh. But I've never worked with live animals on the set since I started The Simpsons, and I'm glad I don't because that's what they have to do sometimes, I guess.
There's one episode in season 1 where it's at an animal shelter. It's too weird to see Alf, with actual animals
I remember
sometimes,
that. Yes.
because they're all freaking out, obviously, because there's this 3-foot hairy Melmacian man.
Oh, they see him walking by and talk because they believe it's it's really freaky creature.
Yeah.
And people also, think that there was a man inside the suit, which was, true very briefly, but almost everything was Paul. Very few shots where there's an actual human fully in the suit.
It always when the human was in the suit, it always you lost your sense. You lost your sense of disbelief almost. It didn't look the puppet.
Yeah, it's very
The
notable.
puppet is so incredible, and Paul's puppeteering was phenomenal.
Yes. Yeah, I thought it was good to establish it, but I agreed you didn't want to see them running around all the time.
No, it didn't. It wasn't as realistic as the puppet, if you see what I mean.
No.
Yes.
No. It's very odd. Yeah, you're instantly taken out of it, and it is a weird thing again because we know full well we are grown men.
Sort of.
Alf. Well, we are legally grown men.
Yeah.
We've got paperwork to prove it and everything, but we know full well, that this is an 80s sitcom we're talking about, and it's a fantastical one. But again, Paul Fusco's puppetry is so good that you do sort of sometimes forget that this is a fictional character there with all these sort of humans around because it's just so well done.
Fluid.
Yeah.
The other thing I would say too, when I was a child, the Batman show with Adam West came on, I was in kindergarten, and I couldn't believe it. Everybody was talking about it the next day. It was the most incredible thing. When you're a kid, and especially in the 80s, there weren't many things like Alf. It was actually very advanced, sophisticated, and unusual. And, now you can get anything anytime, but then it was really pretty a rare commodity for a primetime show.
Yeah, definitely. And sort of tying into what you said before about the rehearsals, was there anything that ever got cut for being too weird or controversial to actually go on air?
Well, there was a thing that we wrote that had a real problem late in the game. We wrote a script, the premise being that Elvis was still alive and saw Alf. And, we really enjoyed writing it, and
Okay.
it got really far down the line. And then an attorney for the network said, which I hadn't known, but I do now, that the state of Tennessee owns Elvis's likeness in a specific protective way where
Wow.
it's not like any other historic figure. It's you actually have to like get specific clearances from that state.
Yeah.
So the show had to get rewritten and toned down considerably. So it implies that, but it isn't clear. And that was one of those things that happens in TV where you go, it's just too bad because I still don't understand the law. I mean, why is this one man immune to? And it was a gentle satire, believe me. It
Yeah.
wasn't any,
Yeah.
it was a sweet episode.
That's,
Yeah.
that's
I mean,
madness.
you can't just swap it out for Hitler or anything, can you? You can't.
No, I would not trade those two.
No. And nor should you. Nor should you. And that goes for you, ladies and gentlemen at home as well. Don't swap Elvis for Hitler.
Yeah, everything we worked on in season 2 was at the set. You'd have a read, and then you'd have that what I mentioned. It was in a warehouse in Culver City, which was funny because Sledge Hammer was also shot in a warehouse in Culver City. I'll tell you a Sledge Hammer story just briefly, which was there was another show shooting below us. I think it was called Rags to Riches, and they were like, "You're too loud. We can hear you laughing when we're shooting." So then some of the writers, of course, being writers, started to drop like heavy typewriters stuff on the floor. When we left, we're like, "Oh, let's see where we go now." It's just like 2 blocks away.
Oh,
So
that's great.
that's where Alf was shot.
It's good to have muscle memory, definitely, when you go into the office, I suppose.
Yes. Also, a tip for people driving in Culver City, California: the police are very anxious to give you a ticket. Make sure every right turn you make is legitimate. It's just a pro tip.
I was going to ask you, if you had to bring Alf back today, how would you do it? But you sort of already did. Because obviously you got Paul Fusco, voice and all, as a couch gag on the 2023 episode, The Many Saints of Springfield.
That was great. We did a joke with Alf on our X-Files crossover, the Springfield Files, where you just saw Alf. And Paul contacted us and goes, "Hey, if you do him again, I'd like to do the voice." And, at The Simpsons, we tuck everything away and then, respond to it 15 years later. So when we were doing the couch gag with the Alf TV guide, I'm like, "Oh, this is great." And of course, Paul sounds just the same, very funny. And that was really a thrill for me.
Yeah, it's beautifully done.
Yeah, there's been talk about bringing it back. Bob has worked on some of it. Benditson. I don't know what the premise is, but I would say the idea to me, there was a show which wasn't our idea, but they hired us to work on it, where we Alf hosted the Tonight Show. And they hired us because we had worked on the Tonight Show, and they said, "You have all jokes that Johnny didn't use. Can you?"
Yeah.
We did. One of them was a Karnak Saint Elsewhere, and it's "What's the number on Mother Teresa's answering machine?" And that for some reason Carson didn't buy, but Alf did, and so that was a really fun week for us. But it's something where he's like a guy that was an '80s star, but he's back would be really funny to me.
Yeah, because he has been popping up here and there slowly, but it was obviously in adverts and stuff like that, and in Practical Jokers he was on. Was that last year? Now was that this year? I can't remember now, John.
I can't remember. It was.
But people, the
brilliant.
The well wishes people have for that character are huge.
The Alf Pogs in The Simpsons,
that was a show we produced about Alf coming back in Pog form.
In Pog form, that's every sort of week we'll get somebody sending us a message about that. That's still so relevant to people's memories. That's how a lot of people remember Alf these days as the pog joke in The Simpsons.
Well, it's funny because between ALF and pogs, that's two, mnemonic devices. Like for, somebody who's, 20 years old would go, "What the hell are you talking about?"
I mean, I suppose when that joke was written in, it was like, this one's already dated, so we're not going to worry about people watching it in 30 years.
It's another thing. I vaguely remember it came from pineapple, orange, guava, and it was some kind of a chip, and but I'm sure it was one of those things that was driven by kids collecting and wanting, different kinds of them. And those things like
Yeah.
Pokemon, I collected comic books. I mean, they come and go.
I remember Pogs being around, but it was not really. I think I had some because there was just some of them were quite shiny,
Yeah.
and I think
You like a shiny thing.
that's the magpie in me. Yeah, just likes a shiny thing. But
Well, like a funny example I can give you of that is when I had my oldest daughter was a teenager and around 2000. Everybody would give her Beanie Babies, but she didn't like them. It's like, oh, she's a kid; she must want Beanie Babies. So at the end, she just gave them to a charity.
Yeah.
It's just like this hobby is stupid.
and History's Born that one out.
Yes.
I think they're worth. And people thought they were going to get the pensions and stuff, weren't they? They thought they.
Astounded at the time that people were paying so much for things that you could clearly get all over the place.
Have you got any Alf merchandise? Did you keep any Alf merchandise throughout the years?
Very, very little. I think I have a comic book or a couple things. I do have a fair amount of Simpsons merchandise from the beginning, but Alf, there is a ton. The guy I know who has a lot is the co-creator Tom Patchett. He, also Conan, very funny. He worked on the original Bob Newhart show. And I'm pretty sure he may have one of the largest collections in the world.
Well, he needs to open a museum, and then we can go.
Yeah.
and ingratiate ourselves. Because Mike said he's a bit scary. He's a bit imposing, or he was in the 80s.
Well, he's very tall. I'm pretty tall, but I think he's even a little bigger. He's from the Midwest. There was one really funny moment I can tell you, which is there was there was a rewrite he didn't like, and so I don't think Mike did this, but he challenged the rest of us writers to a basketball game. And Benditson is like really good with basketball, and I'm pretty tall, but it was him and the PAs who were all from Minnesota and 6'5". It was like we were the New Jersey General. Like, what was it proving? They would dunk on us, and we're like, okay, we'll do a better rewrite next time.
That's healthy though.
It really happened.
That feels like a good way. Get it out of your system a little bit.
Well, there was nothing. I mean, yeah, I was fine. It wasn't something I was upset about. It's like, what's the point? You guys are all taller than all of us.
Yeah, yeah. No, we didn't think that you're bringing up 40-year-old disputes on a British-based Alf podcast. That would be.
No, there really weren't any. And the reason we left wasn't because we were unhappy. It was because our agent, who worked with the Brillstein Company, which produced both Alf and the Garry Shandling show, said, "Oh, you have to get a credit on the Shandling show because that's going to lead you to bigger and better, work opportunities." Which, I mean, it did lead to The Simpsons, so I guess that was true. It was weird because it was the same company, so they were like, leave this one and go to that one. But we had written, Mike and I, a Golden Girls spec back before Sledge Hammer. We were out of work, and Sledge Hammer liked it. The Golden Girls didn't like it, but Garry Shandling liked it, and then he wanted to hire us. So we were there in season 3 after Alf on season 4, and that was I loved Garry. He was really one of the funniest people ever.
Yeah.
That was like jumping into one of those 0-degree lakes in Russia when it's New Year's Eve. It was so much work and so exhausting.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
night and day.
Absolutely. And it's weird because as a kid, I loved Alf, and I loved Garry Shandling's show as well, and then I loved The Simpsons, obviously. And you don't realize at the time that there's this kind of DNA which combines everything.
Especially between Shandling and The Simpsons.
Yeah.
Because it was Sam Simon who, to me, co-created The Simpsons with Matt Groening and Jim Brooks and the show. And he was on the Shandling show and, hired us. And then we hired, Tom Gamble and Max Pross from Shandling. Yeah, there was a lot of crossover.
Yeah. They're all in their own little bubble, I guess,
I'll say again, in 1986, I think that's when Shandling also started. We did not work on the first 2 seasons of that show. I thought it was the most brilliant thing I ever saw. I mean, there was nothing even close. Moonlighting was great, but on television, something that was that original and that, inventive and broke the fourth wall. That was just astounding.
Yeah.
And now people are kind of used to it, like the Office format. It's hard to describe just what an amazing, how you would seek a show like that out back then.
But it's something Mike said to us as well about how nobody in TV watched TV, which is how the Simpsons couch gags came about. But in the first episode of Alf's, Willie mentioned the Cosby Show. He says, "Have we learned nothing from the Cosby Show?" And it's interesting to remember how influential and revolutionary that was at the time. Nobody did that kind of thing.
Oh, and how Mike and I started on a version of the movie. It was a TV version, 9 to 5, and it didn't work.
Mhm.
And at that point, which was 82, I remember agents going, "I don't think comedy's working, guys. You better write a spec hour and stuff." And I'm like,
Oh.
"Wait, comedy's not, people don't want to laugh."
Mm.
And then Cosby came on and turned everything around.
Hmm.
Uh, and not talking about him personally, but that show saved everybody's careers at that time. It suddenly, of course, people did want to laugh, and then Golden Girls was a smash, and then suddenly, you know, comedies were the yeah.
When Alf is in the top 10, it is with Cosby, Golden Girls, got all these big, big shows. And it's sort of almost, I think, a shame that Alf doesn't get the respect. It's still a very well written, funny series.
The Cosby Show not only made, itself a hit, I think, although Cheers is fantastic, one of my favorites, it made Cheers a hit,
Yeah.
and that led to the whole network. It was, I think, part of why Alf was a hit, and why then Seinfeld later became a hit. It was an amazing phenomenon. So,
Mm.
but yeah, it all started with the Cosby Show.
Did people say Alf is a kids show? Is that partly why it doesn't get the respect it's due these days? You think?
Yeah. And both shows, I would say because we weren't on Fox with Alf, broadcast standards was somewhat more stringent, but even more so that the format where you have to like have these very few sets and you can't, create all these environments because it's too complicated for the puppet
Mm.
was stringent. Both The Simpsons and Alf, we weren't writing just for kids.
Mm.
No.
I remember one joke I pitched on Alf when he was talking to the woman who couldn't see was just like, "Oh, I'm nobody unusual. I'm just a normal average being from your planet." Like that's a line I would say is for adults, not for kids. And when I was a
Yeah.
kid, the show that I liked a lot and then was amazed at how, much was under the surface as an adult was Bullwinkle and Rocky.
Yeah, definitely. I think the best shows, again, like The Simpsons, written for the writers' entertainment. And if other people enjoy that, say with Jay Ward stuff, it's just fun.
They were geniuses. Yeah. Chris Hayward, who worked on Get Smart, just you watch them as an adult go, "Oh God, this is so funny. I didn't realize what they were up to."
That's reminded me of something I wanted to ask. We've got to ask Mike. Did Paul improvise anything in the dialogue? Because a lot of the time, it feels very natural, and you can see Landry Elson, especially, sort of laughing in the background.
Cracking
It
up,
looks like
yeah.
she's laughing and not the character.
Well,
What-
not only verbally, which he did, but also visually with the
Hmm.
emotions and the way that the puppet really would act like a real living being. And um, it's also what I would say when you write for somebody with a voice like that, like writing for John Lovitz in The Critic, we're also writing to his voice. So some stuff that seems improvised, it's us going, we're playing off his character that he created. And then, yeah, some of the stuff was improvised. He's very funny. That character, it comes from him. Absolutely.
Yeah, because you see him obviously pop up with Alf on various other things. So that was
Yeah.
the beauty of it. Outside the Alf world, he could explore. He could do Hollywood squares or whatever, or award ceremonies, and it would be quite funny. Yeah.
Still could. Yeah. No, he also, it never occurred to me until a while in the physical, normally a comedy actor comes in, does their line, but he's in a trench holding up a puppet. And with the second puppeteer, usually Linda, assisting and moving, it's like that's a lot going on that he's
Mm.
doing at the same time.
Yeah.
Well, one thing Mike said was that he couldn't understand why Alf couldn't meet people. He thought it was a stupid reason, and
Yes, I agree.
the
I
show
agree
would have
with
been
that.
much more successful.
No, it was because there was the premise that he was hiding from the government, which
Yeah.
is a valid premise, but on the other hand, yeah, it's like it's an arbitrary rule. And if you had an episode where he revealed himself It's like I thought a brilliant thing the first Iron Man movie did was gave away the secret identity right at the end because
Yeah,
those things are just so they're contrivances of like 1940s comics,
Yeah.
hiding and secrets, and you you're much more liberated if you don't have to do that.
do you think if you'd stuck around longer, you would have gone weirder with it?
I like I say, it only was on 2 more years after we left,
Mm.
and I'm not sure what we would have done. We would have tried to have been as inventive as possible, and it was really fun to be on the second season. But I think we would have if we hadn't left when we left, we would have left. That's what I'm kind of saying.
Mike also said it was like the most enjoyable year of working.
It was really funny. I find it enjoyable to work on. But the other thing that happened next was we go to the Shandling show where you can talk to the camera and he's got like, sort of godlike powers over the show, the character, as well as Garry. But then we would write certain stuff and they go, oh, that's not the show. Like we did a Brady Bunch parody, but then they'd go, now he's going to go into a time machine, booth. Like, wait, which is the show and which isn't the show? What is the rule? We don't know.
That Monty Python thing, I suppose, of it, the silliness is funnier if it's grounded in a recognizable scenario.
My favorite example of that with Monty Python is the Two Sheds sketch, where it's grounded in the media. I don't know how they wrote it, but to me, like the media emphasizes something. And, like when they put the photo of his second shed up and stuff like that, it's so
Yeah.
funny. Just taking, a stupid thing and repeating it. Or, like in the Holy Grail, where the guy's talking about the forms of government, and here we see a dictatorship coming in because they're beating him up, and yeah, that stuff to me and Mike, that was the gold standard.
And it does show, obviously, with your work going on with from that the beautiful mix of silly and smart. I think it can't be underestimated.
Well, here's a Simpsons kind of story, which is I was working on the running, one of the shows on The Simpsons. Eric Idle walks in, so unannounced, and says, "I'd like to be on the show."
Okay.
Oh my! I mean, I've had more things like that happen than I would ever have thought. And yeah, of course, great. And then we made him a documentary filmmaker based a little on Michael Apted and the Seven Up movies.
Can you just do that then? Walk in and ask to be on the show.
Well, if you're Eric Idle, yeah,
it,
yeah, if you're part of the greatest comedy group of all time, sure.
it really is. It has been a joy going through season 2, and it isn't just because you're here, but we do notice, like, because obviously we do series 1, and it's good and it's fun and it's funny, but series 2 there is such an uptick in comedy, proper jokes.
Oh, very interesting. Well, I'm glad I was there for that. And if I would give credit to one person, it would be Bob Benditson, who, ran it that season and he was great.
Yeah.
Oh, and there's one other thing I want to say. There's a movie that's sort of based on Alf, Permanent
Oh,
Midnight with Jerry Stahl. Jerry
Mhm.
Stahl was a freelance guy who did one script that was totally rewritten, and almost nothing from his script was used. And the movie purports to show how Alf was written, and it's a complete lie. It's
oh,
none of it's true. That's not how it
thank
worked.
God.
It wasn't one writer. It was always a staff. And I was so furious watching that.
Oh, good, because I was also, and I did work on it.
It wasn't what it was at all. I mean, I guess that if there was one writer that worked most, it was Tom Patchett with
Yeah,
Paul. And
yeah,
but that wasn't it at all. And Tom wasn't like that at all. Tom was a brilliant writer, and it wasn't yeah, that's not how the show went. It's just all wrong. That whole movie is just a fraud.
good. I'm glad because it is terrible. It's like, and then I came along and I was the best at writing things, and everyone said I was good, and then I went off and did some heroin, and then I had it off with Liz Hurley.
None of it. Well, I guess he may have done the heroin if that's what he
Well,
said, but none of it's true about it. I mean, I would say he was about the 1,000th most influential writer on the show, and Tom Patchett was the first.
so other than Mike, do you keep in contact with any of the writers?
We kept our contact for a long time. I'm still with Bob for sure, and then Steve Papoon, who moved back to Kansas, where he was from. Very nice guy who wrote, I think, 12 different specs before he got the job on Alpha. Real, lesson in just
Yeah.
persistence, and he was a great guy. Art Everett, we saw a little bit afterwards. I haven't seen him for a while. And Lisa Bannock, I think, moved back to the East Coast. So I haven't heard from her in a while. Those are the ones that were there when we were
Yeah,
there.
we'll try and track her, won't we?
But Bob, I saw, you see your friends like when you're on strike. So picketing in front of Fox, I went to see Bob a lot. And I saw him at a Christmas party last year
Yeah.
too. And he's the guy who's always been like tremendous physical conditions. He looks to me identical to how he did in 1986. Really nice to see him.
And he's got a brother as well. Howard worked on season 1 as
Yes.
well.
They were a writing team, and Howard retired earlier, and then Bob ran shows for a while. But Howard's very nice too. I never worked with him directly, met him.
It's just the idea that one brother would go, "That's enough Alf for me," and the other one is like, "More Alf."
Well, with Mike and me, it was similar, which is so we did The Simpsons, and we created a show for Disney called Teen Angel. And then after that, Mike did not want to work as a showrunner anymore. He just, the day-to-day, the biggest thing, if I can speak for him, was the notes, a different number of notes being given by like 12 different people and fixing your show. So I just went back to The Simpsons where you just get notes from Jim and Matt. But I, then ran a show for 20 years. So that was another, and he's been very busy and successful, but yeah, that was why we stopped writing together.
Yeah. I mean, he needed the time to go down into the death Titanic submarine
I know.
among things.
I know. That was, I remember when he did it and we were like, what? And he was like, no, it's fun.
But he's obviously he's started a new Substack. His travels do fascinate us, definitely.
It's ironic. It's a Substack.
Oh, that's why he's got the monies and we do an Alf podcast. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure.
Yes, thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thank you for keeping the Alf torch alive.
I do have one final question, and it's a question we ask all of his guests.
Sure.
Because it became a weird talking point in season 1 of our thing. What do you think, Alf? That is to say, the character of Gordon Shumway. What does Alf smell like?
That's funny because I never thought of anything except for like a nice smell. Now that you mention it, I guess you smell kind of like a dog or something. But
that is the top answer that everyone keeps. Yeah.
Again, the rehearsal Alf was like shaggy and looked like he had a bender the night before. But Alf himself was made up, and he looked good.
Yeah.
We're fascinated by this rehearsal, Alf, actually. Was he really in bad condition, or was he just sort of very shaggy and unkempt?
Well, he would have had to be something happened to the other Alf. He would have been used, but they didn't, keep it in pristine condition. And and Paul's funny. He would just kind of act like he was just a little bit loopy. The whole effect was really crazy. Also, he I believe he had less technology, so that that makes him look a little cruder. But
yeah, of course.
So he smells like a dog, but regular Alf,
dapper,
beyond reproach.
Paco Rabanne.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. I'd say, is there anything you'd like to promote?
The Simpsons is still going strong, and you can watch it on Disney Plus as well as Fox in the US. And
we'll give a leg up to The Simpsons. Okay. I feel ALFsplaining could really push you towards season 40 if we can do our bit.
Then the next question, and I know one way or the other, is 1,000 episodes for The Simpsons.
What are you up to at the moment?
We're going to get to 800. That's a given.
Oh,
right. But see, people go, then you'll get to 1,000. It's like, no, that's like saying you're just going to do 200 episodes, which is not.
Yeah. 200 original ideas. Whenever you're ready, just like.
Yeah, I think we'll get to 40. 1,000 is still a tantalizing question.
Well, if SNL can get to 50 with 3 jokes, then I full believe.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very, very much. It was a pleasure.
We always struggle at the end of an episode to sound sincere because we are British. But we genuinely thank you. This has been an absolute pleasure.
Yeah.
And
my pleasure
thank you for taking some of your time to talk about, let's be honest, a very silly subject.
All right. Thank you very much. Nice to meet you both.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
the first time I've heard that. Ah!
I know that voice. Alf! Oh, Alf, you were canceled too soon.
No, Homer. I was canceled at exactly the right time. Ah!